All right, hi. We're reading CSX CSX Rule Book 2014, effective January 1st, 2014. Chapter 4: Utility Employee Switches, Switching, Shoving, and Securement. 400. Utility Employee. 401. Employee who is not member of a train yard crew may only follow equipment to perform work if A. Assigned to utility employee who has been attached to the train or yard crew. B. A blue signal is established. Signal protection is established. 402. Utility employee may be assigned to one train yard crew at one time. No more than 3 utility employees may be assigned to a work with a single train or yard crew. 403. A employee may work as a member of a train or yard crew after the following steps have been taken to attach to the crew. 1. A train or yard crew is assigned to the controlling locomotive that is under actual control of the locomotive operator. 2. The locomotive operator is in the cab with the controlling locomotive. The remote control locomotive in a remote control mode is under the locomotive operator assigned to that crew, and a member of same crew is the locomotive cab while the locomotive is stationary. 3. The utility employee establishes a communication with the crew contacting the ranking crew member of the train. 4. The ranking crew member provides a notice to each of the crew member of the persistent identity of the utility of the employee. 5. All crews are acknowledged with understanding. 6. The ranking crew member advises the utility employee that he or she is authorized to work as part of the crew. 404. After the utility employee has been attached to the crew, the communication must be maintained in such a manner that each member of the train or crew understands the duties performed and whether the duties will be caused by the crew member to go on, under, or between the rolling equipment. 405. A utility employee who has been attached to the crew may only follow the equipment without a blue signal protection to perform the following tasks: set and release handbrakes, prepare railway cars for coupling, couple, uncouple air closes or their connections, conduct air brake tests to include cutting air brake components in or out position retaining valves, inspecting, test, install, remove, replace, and end of the train marker. 406. When the utility employee has ceased all the work in connection with the train no longer under and between the equipment, the utility employee must notify the ranking crew member to release the utility employee from the train or yard crew. The following steps must be taken. 1. The utility employee must inform the ranking crew member that he or she is no longer following the equipment. The ranking employee must notify the crew member that utility employee is being released from the crew. And 3. All crews must be acknowledged of their understanding. 4. The ranking employee must inform the utility employee that he or she has been released. 401. Operating switches and derails by hand. 401. Employees individually responsible switch and must not operate, switch, and derail until qualified in operating safety rules and operation device. 401.2. Performing line and switch derails, the employee must ensure that there are no conflicting movements and preceding movement has been passed with a clearance point. The device is not locked, clamped, or spiked together or tagged out of the service. No obstructions will interfere with the normal movement of the switching of the points or the handling. 401.3. Rolling equipment must not follow a track until it can be visually determined. 1. Switch rails and derails connected with the movement properly lined and intended the route is clear. 401.4. Do not unlock, operate, switch, and derail that provides access to the control tracks unless authorized by A. Verbal authority from the train dispatcher. B. Signal indication. 401.5. Do not switch in diverging movement of any other train until contacting the approaching train and confirming that the train intends to make the diversion movement. The crew understands the switch will be lined in diverging movement. 3. The train will approach the switch to be prepared to stop. 416. If the lock is determined to be defective, missing on a switch, derail that requires the lock, replace the lock, and if the lock is not readily available, 1. Report the device to the proper authority. 2. Attend the proper protect the device until relieved by a proper authority. 401.7. When the employee determines that a switch derail is effective, the employee must not operate the device, report the device to the proper authority. 3. Tag the device as defective. 401.8. After operating a switch or derail, the employee must make certain that the device is properly aligned, 2, the switch points fit properly, 3, the target is, if equipped, corresponding to the position of the device, 4, a lever is latched, 5, the device is locked, and if equipped with a lock. 4019, on a main track, single track, or siding, the normal position of the hand operating switch is the movement on those tracks, and 2, the normal position for hand operating crossover switch is straight away of the movement. 4110, on other main tracks, single line tracks, and siding tracks, one hand operated crossover switches must be in corresponding positions of both switches lined for the crossover movement of both switches in straightaway movement. 2, the normal position of the hand operated scale track switches is the movement away from the scales. 3, other hand operated switches have normal position. 40111, on all tracks, the normal position of the derails and derailings position. 40112, line switches and derails have designated normal position exact. Expect that when the change for intermediate movement being used for continuous switch operations attended by the qualified employee authorized by the train dispatcher. 40113, restore switches derailed controlled tracks in the normal position before the movement is reported clear to the dispatcher. B, a signal is to produce given another train. 40114, before departing on a location where the main track switches have been operated by hand, each crew member must verbally confirm the position of the switches that they have been locked. 40115, properly both switches the crossover movement before the train follows the crossover. If the switch end at one end of the crossover is changed, properly the line switch at the other end of the crossover to avoid conflicting route, except for when necessary for an employee to establish blue signal protection. 40116, complete the movement of the crossover before each switch is chained in the corresponding position, except when one crew is using both tracks connected by the crossover during the continuous switch operations. Spring switches. 4021, special instruction designated location in the normal position of the swing switches. The spring switches are identified with the letter S or letters S and S. On the signal located on the near end switch, 4022, special instructions may designate aspect indications for special switch signals. When not connected to the special instruction of the following: a color position light shows has the following: 2 lunar lights, switch to the line normal. 2 red lights with a white marker light, switch to line reversed. 2 red lights without a white marker line, switch is not properly lined. A color light with green, switch is line normal. Red, the switch is not properly lined. 4023. Spring switch must not be spiked, blocked until protection of the trailing movement has been provided. 4024. The trailing movements with the switch may only be made through a spring switch that is lined in the normal position. 4025. When buildup of snow and ice covers the rail and track, conditions cannot be clearly observed. The trail movement must be made through a spring switch until the switch has been lined and handed from the movement. B, the facing points of movements must stop. Visually determine the switch points if properly before proceeding. 4026. Equipment with the stop will make the trailing movement from the spring switch. Must not make a reverse movement to allow equipment to roll back until the switch has been lined up or by hand into the proper position. 4027. If it is non-signal territory, spring switch signals governing the face point of movements approach these locations prepared to govern by aspects displayed. 4028. When a signal governing the use of a spring switch indicates the switch is not properly lined or facing the point of the movements must not be made until the switch is tested, completely lining the switch with the opposite position, then completely back to the original position. 2. Switch is properly lined intended for the intended route, and the switch is fit properly. 403. Electrically locked switches. 4031. Permission for the train dispatcher required before operating electrically locked switches or derailed to A. Enter a single track, B. Cross the single track to another. 4032. A train standing on the single track does not need permission for the train dispatcher to unlock, operate electrically locked switches derailed to the movement of the single track to a non-signal track. The train must stand 100 feet of the switch and to permit the switch to unlock. 4033. An electrical lock switch or derail cannot be unlock through normal procedures. The train dispatcher can permit the crew to break the seal, operate the emergency release feature. If equipped, the train dispatcher must notify the single department of the occurrence. 404. Releasing the handbrakes. 4041. Do not release the handbrakes. Cars until coupled to the locomotive on the grade where the independent brake will not hold the equipment charges the air brake makes sufficient brake pipe reductions. B. Locomotives until the main reserve is fully charged and independent brake cut in and fully applied. 405. Switching equipment. Two or more crews must simultaneously perform work in the same track, adjacent tracks, until 1. The job briefing has been held. 2. All crew members confirm that the understanding of the work to be performed. 4052. When at the industries, 1. Movements must only be made with the gates at the doors other than such devices fully open and fastened. 2. Visually determine the switch and derails occupied by standing equipment are properly lined and latched if equipped with a latch for the movement. 3. Do not move partially loaded cars unless landing is secure. 4. Return cars to the original locations unless instructed otherwise. 5. Do not take movements of the portion of the track when dirt and sand and gravel or other debris of the grid covers the rail, obstruction of the flange of the way of vehicular pedestrian crossing, notifying the proper authority of the condition. 6. Initial movements must be made of locomotive when track conditions cannot be clearly observed due to the buildup of snow and ice and covering the rail with obstruction of the flange weight of the vehicular and pedestrian crossing. 4053. Stop the movement at least 50 feet, but not more than 250 feet before the coupling to the equipment. 250 feet safety stop before coupling to the equipment. Before coupling, making it certain 1. The employee direction of the coupling is located on the ground and visually determined, but the couplers are aligned. At least one knuckle is open. Any person riding the equipment not seated on the locomotive dismounts until the coupling is made. 3. The person in or around the equipment notified to remain the clear. 4. The employee directing the coupling makes visual determination that the connection devices used for loading and unloading fuel equipment are removed. 4054. When initiating the movement of the couple equipment, do not select a position greater than the couple. When the operating remote control equipment, do not or B. Do not exceed 4 miles per hour operating equipment other than remote control. 4055. After coupling, stretching, and slacking to ensure the couplers are to connect hoses or electrical connections or locomotive cross chains, walk chains. 4056. When switching cars must only be cut into the motion when pushed into the locomotive. Do not cut the cars off into the motion when pulling into the by a locomotive. When the kicking cars, 1. Ensure the clear of the equipment before giving the signal to move. 2. When the slack is bunched, pull the uncoupled clicking lever. Do not attempt to hold the lever at the speed more than walking speed of 4 miles per hour. When desired speed is reached, give the signal to stop. Do not cut the car off right at the adjacent track until it is known that the preceding car is clear will remain clear of the adjacent tracks. 4057. Do not uncouple equipment in the curves or turnouts where the curvature would prevent safe coupling to the equipment. 4058. Equipment must not be shoved by static drop unless provided with the special instructions. 4059. A switching passenger equipment, camp cars, or other designated carrier riders notify the occupants prior to making the switching movements. Do not cut the equipment off into the motion. Allow it to be struck. The equipment that was cut off into the motion. And 3. Use the air brakes when switching. 406. Shoving and pushing equipment. Employees involved with the shoving or pushing of movements must not be engaged in unrelated tasks. B. The provide protection while occupying the automobile similarized motor vehicle. 4062. Unless protected by shove lights and other technical means provided with the special instructions, shoving and pushing movements must be protected by a crew member with other qualified employee. 4063. After all the ensuring the coupling are made with the stretching slack of the employee directing the movement must know the track is clear, providing the point of the protection or being positioned to make the positive visual determination the track is clear and means 1. Therefore, not conflicting movements. All 2. Intervening switches and derails are properly aligned with the intended movement. 3. There are no intervening highways or pedestrian crossways at the grade where such a crossing have been made accessible. 4. There is sufficient room in the track to hold equipment to being shoved. 406.2. The employee directing the movement of the given instructions sufficient to advance the permanent compliance. If there is any doubt of the meaning of the instruction or for whom such instructions are intended, the movement must be 1. Properly be stopped immediately. 2. Not resume the instructions are understood until the instructions are understood. 406.5. When using radios during shoving and pushing movements, employees directing the movement and thus communicate with the following employee receiving the instructions. 1. The employee physical location. 2. The employee of the clear all tracks. 3. The position, switch, and derails involved within the move. 4. The distance of movement to be made with the site, the distance available where is in less than 50 car foot lengths. Employee controlling the movement must stop the movement in 1/2 of the last specified distance unless additional instructions are received. 406.6. When shoving and pushing equipment for the purpose of other than coupling, the movement must be stopped within 50 feet short of a blue signal, derail, or improperly lined switch, on-track equipment, and obstruction and end of the track. If necessary, to make any other further movement to place equipment, allow the slack to adjust before moving. 407. Leaving equipment in the clear. Standing in the 407.1. Standing in the equipment must not follow the connection tracks. When the clearance points are not identified, visible, determined with the clearance points. 1. Standing outside the rail of the connecting track. 2. Extending of the arm toward the equipment. 3. The identifying the location of the equipment can no longer be touched. And 4. The position equipment can additional 50 foot car length in the track of the location identified in step 3. 407.2. When the track length is insufficient to permit the leaving of the equipment clear to the connecting of the tracks, it is necessary to leave the equipment beyond the clearance point. The equipment must completely occupy the switch of the connecting track. 408. General securement requirements. 408.1. Conduct a job briefing when required to secure any train and equipment that will be left unattended. 408.2. Prior to leaving the train and equipment unattended, secure the tested handbrakes by alternative method specified in the special instructions. 409. Securement of the cars. 409.1. Complete with the following steps before the applying the handbrakes to cars that will be left unattended. 1. The bunch of the slack, which applying the handbrakes at the low end of the grade and stretch the slack when applying to the high end. 2. The fully apply with the independent brake. 3. Make a full surface application of the automatic brake. 409.2. Apply and test the handbrakes at the required number of the cars to be left unattended as follows. The number specified in the special instructions. B. On each of 1 of 2 of the cars that are left unattended. C. On minimum of 2 cars or 3 or more cars are left unattended. 409.3. After applying required number of handbrakes to the car, verify the handbrake chains are tight. 2. Instruct the locomotive operator to release the independent and automatic brakes. And 3. Verify the brake shoes on the B end of the cars against the wheels of the cars with the handbrakes applied. 409.4. Test the handbrakes are sufficient to hold the equipment above. Observe the equipment for 1 minute with the air brakes released. A. The handbrakes insufficient with no movement occurs, but after 1 minute the handbrakes are no sufficient movement occurs to stop the movement. Applying for the independent brake, making the full surface application of the automatic brake, then applying the additional handbrakes, repeating the test. Insufficient handbrakes for the no movement occurs during the 1 minute observation. 409.5. To test the handbrake of the single car sufficient with the hold the equipment to push against the car with the locomotive. A. The handbrake is sufficient with retarding effect is observed. B. The handbrake is not sufficient if no retarding effect is observed. Do not leave the single car that fails to test a sufficient handbrake unintended until a minimum of 2 additional cars have been tested and the handbrakes are coupled to get to the car. 409.6. Before cutting away from the cars connected to the air, make a full surface brake pipe reduction to verify. 2. Verify the brake pipe exhaust stops before closing the angle cock. And 3. Ensure the angle cock is open with the equipment to be left unattended. 4010. Securement of the locomotives. 410.1. The single locomotive consists not attached to the cars but will be left unattended, fully applied with the independent brake before applying with the handbrakes. 410.2. Apply and test the handbrakes on the required number of the locomotives to be left unattended fouls. A. On each locomotive equipped with a handbrake when left unattended outside the locomotive service facility. B. On the minimum of one locomotive when left unattended inside the locomotive service facility. 4.10.3. After applying the required number of the handbrakes to the single locomotive, the locomotive consists without cars attached. Release the independent automatic brakes, allowing for 4 seconds per locomotive to ensure the complete release of the air brakes before beginning of the test of the sufficient hand of the handbrakes. 4.10.4. To test the sufficient handbrakes of the locomotive without the car attached, select the direction and place of the throttle number 1 position. Number 1 power position. The locomotive operator must operate the amperage and tractive effort is developed. A. The handbrakes are sufficient if no movement occurs, and if the movement occurs but stops within 10 feet. Or B. The handbrakes are not sufficient, movement occurs and does not stop within 10 feet. Stop with the movement applying with the independent brake. 4.10.5. If the handbrake of the use of single locomotive handbrakes on locomotive consisted to be left unattended without the car's insufficient signal, locomotive is not equipped with a handbrake, secures the fouls. A. Apply an improved choke on the chain, provide a mechanical department employment in behind the R2 wheel, and verify the shock on the chain will hold the equipment releasing the independent brake. Automatic brakes waiting for 4 seconds to allow the air brake to fully release. If the locomotive does not move, the shock of the chain is insufficient. 4.10. If any of the handbrake locomotive consists located with the locomotive service facility is not sufficient, apply the additional handbrakes and complete the test of sufficient handbrakes. 4.10.7. When left unattended, switches and levers in single locomotive and the controlling locomotive of a locomotive consisting must be positioned in direction in the table below. A switch lever with the independent brake, your position is in cut in and fully applied. Automatic brake, your position is no cars attached for the cut in or the in release position, and also with the cars attended to the cut in and the full service application applied. The reverser positions are in key train removed from the locomotive of the possession locomotive operator, and the position of not of a key train removed and stored. The switch lever is controller fuel pump, and the position for that would be either engine left running on the position and an engine manually shut down in the off position. A switch lever at the generator field of the position is an off position. The switch lever in an engine running is an engine left running on position, and a engine manual shutdown off position. Isolation switch or lever, isolation switch or lever start and stop isolation in position. Switch or lever battery knife switch. The positions are engine left running in closed position, and the position engine manually shut down. No mechanically system restart is planned. Open position. 4.11. Securement of the trains. 4.11.1. It is necessary for the train to unattend with the cars the locomotive attached. 1. Secure the accordance with the rule governing the application, testing the handbrakes on the cars to be left unattended. 2. The position of switch lever of the control locomotive as directed by the rules governing the leaving a locomotive unattended. 3. The applying of the handbrake on each of the locomotives consistent equipped with a handbrake. 4.12. The securement of key trains. Do not leave the key trains, the trains that meet the key train definition unattended but on the control track outside the yard or the terminal unless the location is authorized by special instruction. Permission received from the train dispatcher that does not apply with the assigned and attached crew is performing a normal railroad operation in connection with their train. A. Picking up or setting off with the repositioning of cars at the industry. B. Assembling the cars from the tracks adjacent from the main track. C. Adding and removing, changing locomotives. D. Moving the part of the train with double hills and cutting crossings, and E. Assisting a disabled train. 4.12.2. A permitted leave of the key train and the cut of the cars meet the key train definition unintended on a controlled outside of the yard or terminal secured to the tested handbrakes in accordance with all the rules and special instructions. 4.12.3. Except for the assigned attached with the crew performing normal railroad operations in connection with their own train prior to leaving a secured key train and cut of the cars to meet the definition of the key train unintended with the control track outside of the yard terminal, the train crew must be provided with the following information to the train dispatcher. 1. The milepost location on both ends of the train, length of the train, of the type of the train, mixed freight, intermodule unit train, number of the cars, and number of the locomotives, number of the handbrakes applied to the test end of the car, applied on the locomotive track, and the curve of the tangent, grade, and ascending, descending, or flat, undulating 5. Current weather conditions. 6. And the name of the employee reporting the secure information. 412.4. When cutting away from the cut of the cars, if the cars meet the key train definition to be left unattended on a controlled track with the locomotive detached, allow the cut to go in emergency. 412.5. When leaving a key train with the locomotive attached on a controlled track, the locomotive operator must remove the reverser from the controlling the locomotive. 2. Keep the reverser in his or her position. 3. Return the reverser to the proper storage at the off-duty location if the hours in the service permit. 412 defective handbrakes. 413 defective handbrakes. 413.1 report equipment defined as the defective handbrakes at proper authority. Couple the car with a defective handbrake to a minimum of 2 additional cars with tested handbrakes before leaving it unattended. Record the locomotive with the handbrake defects of the locomotive work report. Chapter 5 Centralized Train Dispatching and Authority Movement.